Hi friends, in Planet Earth Dating it's Friday, April 7th, 2017. In both the Lynn life and the Jamie body mind, the authorized souls remain only child souls from the deeper, denser dimensions, and also nature realm's guardians. For the second day in a row, we find ourselves in a very interesting situation. What seems to be happening in the less dense levels above is dimensional collapse at an extremely rapid pace, and it seems to be accelerated by bombing raids happening in those levels, and literally everything is crumbling and falling down. Boom, 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 boom. And part of what's happening is that what seems to be literally millions of souls are falling into these host lives in a very disoriented state.
That's true.
Seem to have fallen into a horrifying dream, and it's not that the lives of these hosts are horrifying. That's not it. It's the ambient environment of lies and craziness where it's very hard to look at anything that's news without having a barrage of layer upon layer upon layer of confusion and untruth and varying degrees of poor intention.
That's true.
And so these souls are trying to figure out where they are and what's going on. They want us to look at news sources, and then what comes in is they're shrieking almost as if in soul pain.
That's true.
At the degree of untruth that's being packaged and called news.
Yes, that's true.
And while we have a lot of compassion for their plight, this is not the right place for them. So it's an interesting period of time.
That's true.
As always, our foundational intention is to do what is ours to do right now in all dimensions to manifest the divine plans, since that's what our soul contracts commit us to doing. And with that, the formally videoed portions of today's efforts begin, and we see how, in fact, what's going on here could intertwine perfectly with that assignment.
That's true.
What do I mean? Okay, first look up. You're talking to an echo point. Look up way up high. Do you see those hands? All those hands. It's like a panel of something, a panel of important people we should listen to speaking. That's who's speaking, those hands. All right, we're going to ignore these arguers and continue on. The point actually is valid, that this could intersect with the important work. And why is that? Because the dimensions are collapsing, and what do we know? We know that there are too many dimensions. There are an awful lot of dimensions that don't seem to serve any useful purpose whatsoever.
That's true.
And it seems as though the accordion has come out to its maximum capacity of multidimensionality, and now it needs to compress back down to something that actually works, so that presences are living their soul plans rather than living in oppositional defiant disorder to their soul plans, which is what seems to be happening now. So it's a useful process, albeit unpleasant for the presences involved.
That's true.
Somebody is putting an interesting point on the table. They're saying that we say the authorized soul presences are child souls from the deeper, denser dimensions. They see it now. Yes, these include children. These souls who are here include children,
That's
and they
true.
have fallen into the deeper, denser dimension.
Yes, that's true.
So they are souls in the deeper, denser dimension, and therefore potentially could be fitting the definition of from the deeper, denser dimension. And so those who are actually children would fit our definition, and we agree with that.
Yeah, that's
But
true.
those who are post-pubescent don't fit the definition. And what do we know? What seems to be working best is to encourage them to up anchor, just pull up their anchors, and to let the astral drift currents carry them wherever the astral drift currents carry them, which for the most part seems to be into the past.
That's true.
At roughly this dimensional level, give or take.
Yeah, this is true.
And somebody seems to be very confused about the term astral drift currents, and kind of like looking through an old encyclopedia or something and saying, it's not here, what are you talking about?
Yes.
As best we can tell, when the divine delivery system began to fall apart. What used to be an updraft that kept karma in the level of origin and kept things working, grace, helping people do what they're supposed to do rather than not do anything that they're supposed to do, those currents began to just fall down.
Yes, that's true.
They weren't powerful enough to go up without the vortices that fell apart. Whoever's arguing, please, I'm going to have to reach past you because you're slowing us down. But maybe this is valid, and I can see that. When the vortices began to fall apart, which was maybe 5 years ago, we started to notice it, and the big inquiry was, what is happening to the vortices? And we still don't know the answer to that, but we do know that they're collapsed. And after the vortices collapsed, then these kinds of things began happening, that what used to be upward rising energy just started to fall down.
That's right.
And now it's just drift currents that were many wise minds have called astral drift currents. They're just currents that run through the astrals, and people who have out-of-body experiences get caught up in them and carried who knows where, and sometimes those souls are never seen again.
That's true.
And other souls come in and take up residence in the body that soul just vacated.
That's true.
And so the life lives on, and they feel different for a couple of days, but after a while they start to just get used to their new way of being.
That's true.
And it isn't until they look at really old pictures that they say, wow, I feel like I'm a completely different person now.
That's right.
Why do you ask? And also, which way is up? Yes, and what we see is this contaminated zone is so much bigger than anybody wants to think.
That's true.
And these presences whose zones are being actively bombed right now, I think the window of opportunity has all but closed. Now is the time for you to do whatever it is of your soul plan that you can do right now. Just start doing things that you are supposed to do quick before you die, because it's coming soon.
That's true.
And it could come at any moment for any of us.
That's
and in
true.
these contaminated zones, I think actually in all the zones, I think we're actually all dead anyway. I think that this is just layer upon layer of dead people. We see no difference at all between this dimension and those dimensions, and there are dimensions beneath us.
That's
that
true.
They're all just dead. They're dead. We're all dead.
That's right.
But moving from one dimension of sentience to another is the quote death unquote experience. It's just a transitional experience. And this is a time of active transition for what seems to be an awful lot of dimensions.
That's true.
I see what's happening, and therefore what probably is happening is a sorting process, and this would tie into channeling from earlier today.
That's true.
That we sort the children and send them up, away from the adults and send them into the past. And some children might wish to go with the adults, and some adults might wish to go with the children, and that's fine, and we're not preventing families from staying together. We aren't. But in general, children and those who wish to accompany them up, and adults and those who wish to accompany them up, anchor, and ride the astral drift currents into the past. And why into the past? Because there's a win-win-win opportunity there. These presences will be souls coming in from the future, from quite some distance in the future in many cases. True. And they bring the awareness with them of how terribly the existing course of action is turning out. And
that's true.
They can hopefully, maybe, possibly inspire lives to make different choices, better choices, choices that are more what the situation actually calls for.
That's true.
And thereby help the soul, help the life, and help the greater good.
It's very quiet.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
It just got very quiet.
It did just get very quiet.